The end, it's my pleasure to introduce our final closing keynote speaker, but before I do, I want to make a big ask of you. If you haven't done it yet, hopefully when you walked in, you saw the big license plate that was up on an easel. We are trying to get a epilepsy awareness license plate approved in the state of Colorado. We need to gather 3,000 signatures. So we need your help. If you haven't signed the petition yet, please do so when you leave today and help us get that license plate. But now I get to introduce our final speaker for the day. You may have already sat in on his workshop earlier, but if not, you're going to really enjoy this. Mark DeFee is a longtime volunteer with the Epilepsy Foundation of Colorado. He's been involved in a number of different initiatives that we've done. He co-leads Project Uplift, which Dr. Collier earlier today spoke a little bit about. He's been involved in our CARE, formerly known as CAN group. He's been a fundraiser for us, and he's been really instrumental for us over the last year or so as we've been developing our mental health program at the Epilepsy Foundation. So he's a good friend of ours, and really a pleasure and an honor to introduce Mark. So
thank you.
join me in welcoming him.
Thank you. Before I start, how awesome was today? I mean, yeah, very cool. This is the second year, and I feel like we've taken a big step forward. Last year was pretty great, but this is a really good time today. So let's thank EFCO real quick, because this took a lot of work. So thank you. Yeah. And of course, this can't happen without our sponsors. So, please remember them as well, because that's the engine that drives all this. And then last thing, the speakers. I mean, they were just incredible today. I was joking in my breakout session, I'm the only one without MD after my name, so I felt a little inadequate because they are good. They know what they're talking about. And then Dr. Collier, oh my gosh, he just kept me laughing the whole time. So all around today, it has been a very good day. And we're going to wrap up here as I tell my story, give you a little bit of information, but just kind of wrap up this whole thing about connections and what they can do for us and how they can strengthen our life. So let's dive in. When avoiding failure becomes your motivator, you are traveling down the path of inactivity. You can stumble only when you are moving. I found that quote taped to my bathroom mirror one Friday night when I was a senior in high school. It's one of those nights that stay with you forever. I grew up in Texas where high school football is king. Whole communities come out to support their teams, and mine was no different. In fact, I grew up in Plano where our program was pretty well known. We, at the time, had the most state championships in the state of Texas for our division, and we had just won our last one 2 years prior. My brother was a senior on that team. So expectations were high. We even had books written about us. It was a big deal. The problem was that we weren't very good my senior year, but we still had these expectations. And we weren't going to make the playoffs. Maybe we were. We weren't going to win a state championship, that's for sure. We were struggling to make the playoffs. But that Friday night, we were playing the number 2 team in the state, the North Mesquite Stallions. And our stadium seats about 15,000 people. And you better believe that Friday night, it was completely packed. This was our Super Bowl. This was our chance to make something of our season. It wasn't going very well, but tonight, we could beat the number 2 team in the state. They were going to go on. Everyone thought they were going to win the state championship, and if we could beat them, how cool would that be? And we played like it. In fact, we were up 1 late in the fourth quarter. We had them pinned deep in their own territory. All we had to do was just make a stop, get the ball back, and the game was ours. That's when their man-child of a running back with his tree trunk-sized legs got the ball and started heading my direction. I don't think he even noticed I was there. I mean, he hit me like a Mack truck and just kept going for another 60 yards before my teammates finally tackled him, but not before he had gotten well within field goal range. So like something out of a movie, they kicked the winning field goal as time expired. Now, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but it's a surreal thing to be walking off of a field knowing thousands of eyes are staring at you, glaring at you. I had taken this moment from them. This was a proud community of football fanatics. And we had played hard the entire game, and then it was me who let it all slip away. My teammates were kind, but you could tell they were disappointed. I could tell they were frustrated, angry. Every Friday night after the game, I would come home and watch the game film with my dad. He would either bring a video camera to the game, or it would be playing on public television, so he would record it. And we'd sit down and watch it together. It's just something we did. That Friday night, I drove up to my house, and all the lights were off. Nobody was up. I thought, man, this is bad. My own parents don't want to talk to me. That's when I flipped on the light in my bathroom and saw that quote. Because I knew that he was just giving my space. Because to tell you the truth, that's kind of how my entire senior year went, like that night, feeling like I was letting people down and I was all alone. That's because 2 weeks before school started, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I found out I had seizures when I woke up in the back room of a gas station with 3 strangers staring at me. I had no idea what was going on. Luckily, they were there to help. A few days after that, I had my second seizure at a neurologist's office, and it was just like my first, a 4-minute grand mal seizure, now known as tonic-clonic seizures. When I came to, the neurologist explained that during my EEG there was brain activity. It was a self-induced seizure. The hyperventilating got me. And he said I now met the medical criteria to be diagnosed with epilepsy. And with that comes 4 new pillars of my life that need to be implemented immediately. Take your medication as prescribed, no deviations. Minimize your alcohol intake. Get 8 hours of sleep every night. And reduce the stress in your life as much as possible. Oh, and you're going to need to forfeit your license for 6 months. That's perfect, Doc. I was planning on doing all those things my senior year anyway. It was tough. And what's funny is every neurologist I met with had those 4 rules. And they also said, to the best of our medical opinion, we believe this is caused by concussions received in high school football, because all the electrical activity or abnormality came from the left side of my brain. Not one of them said I needed to stop playing. They left it up to the 17-year-old. They left it up to the 17-year-old who had been playing football in Plano since 5th grade. Preparing, learning playbooks, doing all that, getting ready for my varsity year. Of course I'm not going to sit out. If you're going to leave it up to me, yeah. And this isn't some tragic story of some, all-world athlete missing out on his destiny of playing pro ball or something. I wasn't even going to play college football. I was just an average high school football player. One of thousands, hundreds of thousands that have played before me. But that's kind of the point. This could have happened to anybody. I just happened to be the one it happened to. And, I wasn't like a terrible athlete. I was okay. I was above average, I'd say. My claim to fame was my speed. I was very proud of that. And in fact, do y'all want to see my greatest play ever? Like 8 years, we combed through the records. My dad has a lot of video. And we found this play a couple years ago, and I was so excited. I tried to show it to everyone who will watch it. And I told my wife I was playing it today, and she's like, you just want to play this so people watch it. And I do, so we're going to. So here we go. That's me in the backfield. Where's the pointer? That guy. Ready? Oh. Whoa. There we go. Well, I don't know what that is. So we'll just move on. So I went from that to now being this fragile thing that people didn't want to come around because they didn't know what was going to happen next. It was surreal how quickly it changed. That first day of school, it was easy to tell who had found out and who didn't. And this was before social media. You actually had to walk to people to give them information. Some people in this room are like, that sounds exhausting. But it spread like wildfire. And the people who didn't know came running up, excited to talk about our senior year. What'd you do this summer? What classes are you in? How's the team going to be? Oh, we're going to have so much fun. The people who did know, they walked up a little bit more slowly. They stood a little bit further away. They asked questions like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? And then that quickly became everyone. Students, teachers, parents, coaches. Everyone had that approach to me, which I couldn't really be angry about it. I mean, I knew it came from a place of fear for them. I didn't know anybody who had epilepsy. I didn't know anybody who knew anybody who had epilepsy. So I was just kind of on this island, alone, trying to figure it out as I go. And no doctor ever said, do you know how to reduce your stress? Do you need help with that? Is there someone you'd like to talk to? No, I kind of pieced it together on top of all the other things I had going on my senior year. Taking SATs, choosing a college, spending one more year with all the friends you had made growing up. It teaches you who your friends are pretty quickly. And one of the things I will always be grateful for is I'm part of a group of 5 of us. The first 2 of us met in kindergarten. The last one joined in 7th grade. And we are still best friends to this day. And they were the ones who were there for me. They were the ones who were picking me up and taking me to school so my parents didn't have to drive me as a senior. One of them played football with me, so he took me home every night. Even though I think we can all acknowledge at this point I should not have been on that field, but I was, and he was there for me. So I can't be too upset because I know this came from a place of fear for people, but it doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It did. And it created a lot of anxiety, stress, loneliness, on top of all the things that are going on in a typical teenager's life. I had this perpetual thought in the back of my mind of, am I about to wake up after having a seizure? Am I about to wake up and see everyone staring down at me? Hopefully all I've done is bite my tongue. And hopefully I haven't messed myself or anything like that. Playing nonstop every day, every moment. Am I about to have another one? Am I about to have another one? On the football field, in class, everywhere. If you don't get control of that, it'll consume you. So that was my senior year. That summer, my parents and my neurologist sat me down and said, you need to take this seriously. It's been less than a year since you've been diagnosed. You're about to go off to college where your parents aren't going to be there to take care of you. You need to grow up quickly. You need to remember the 4 rules, and you need to communicate with us if something's going wrong. And I said, absolutely. I completely agree. I assure you, I'm going to take this seriously. I promise you, I will follow these rules, and if something goes wrong, I'll let you know. So, when I went off to college, I did the only thing I could think of. I joined a fraternity. Yeah, that's one of the pledges, getting their haircut. I think this is the best representation of how little respect I gave my diagnosis back then. I mean, looking at these photos, no one should be doing these things, let alone someone with epilepsy, but I was a stupid teenager who thought I was invincible. My seizures had become well controlled with medication. And because of that, I began convincing myself the doctors were wrong. I didn't have epilepsy. They got it wrong. I don't need to worry about this stuff. I can go have a normal life just like everybody else. That senior year was a fluke. It sucked, but it's over with. Now let's get on with it. Of course, that didn't last very long. I had another seizure pretty quickly, which meant I had a whole new group of friends to explain it to. And these were friends that I had just met. I had to forfeit my license again. So now I had to explain to a whole new group of friends why I had to ask for rides to school. And it was tough. It was one of those, it just felt like a beatdown. I thought I was behind it. I thought I was past it. Now I'm being pulled right back into it. And it was all my own making. I didn't understand that or respect it back then. I just thought it was unfair. And for a few years in college, that's how it was. And I don't think I'm unique. I think people who are diagnosed with epilepsy, it takes quite some time to wrap your head around all the changes that are required to live a healthy life with seizures. It wasn't until my junior year of college, so 3 years or so, that I really began respecting my diagnosis. It happened because I was on a study abroad program, and I saw the world. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I realized I was being pretty selfish. There's a lot of pain going on in this world, and all I was thinking about was how unfair my life had become. Like really, fairness is a thing. Life is just life. We have to roll with it. When I came back from that study abroad program, I had a new attitude. I had a new view of things. I didn't like that my parents paid my tuition. I felt like I saw so many people younger than me in this world taking care of themselves. I should be able to do the same. So I got 2 jobs my senior year. And I realized helping others gave me an oasis from my own problems. It allowed me to take a break and just kind of take all my stuff and throw it over there for a little bit and just focus on someone else. And to tell you the truth, to this day, I don't know why, but I was walking through the psychology building because I had switched majors. I had wanted to go into law enforcement in high school and early college, and I was getting an accounting degree. And for some reason, I had just never connected in my mind that a medical director with a police department or a law enforcement agency would never sign off on me carrying a weapon, which is fine because they're loud. So I had to switch because I realized I didn't want to be an accountant, and I was doing that for this career path. And when that was shut down from me, I realize now the joy it gave me to be able to start over and to find myself. And I got into psychology. I really connected with it. And so walking through the psychology building one day, there was a little flyer, you kind of pull the tab at the bottom or whatever, for the Lubbock Rape Crisis Center. I went to school at Texas Tech in Lubbock, and they needed paraprofessional counselors. And even though I was getting a degree in psychology, I wasn't really thinking of being a clinician at the time. But it sounded like it could be a place I could help, because they were looking specifically for male volunteers. And so my senior year, I was on call basically all the time, and whenever a male had been assaulted, whether it was a child or an adult or whatever, I went out and sat with them. Sometimes at the hospital, sometimes at their place, but it was an experience that none of my friends at school could really wrap their head around or understand why I was doing it. They were still my good friends, but they were still living that fraternity life we just saw, and I wasn't anymore. I also volunteered at First United Methodist Church with their youth group, working with kids. Brought me joy. And so my senior year, I had 2 jobs, 2 volunteer roles, and a full course load. And to tell you the truth, I felt great. I wasn't tired the way that I was my first few years. I was dedicating my energy to the things that brought me happiness and joy. And that just happened to be helping other people. It turned into like this magic potion for me. Focusing on other people allowed me to forget about my stuff for a while. And I'm not saying that's what you should do or even that's completely healthy. If you're just going to ignore all your stuff, it's going to manifest and pop up in some form or fashion. So yes, you need to look at yourself. Have that self-care that Dr. Collier was talking about, that compassion. But you also need to find ways to manage the stress, to manage the pain of this diagnosis. And for me, that became helping others. And that's what I started chasing after college. That's why I ended up getting my master's in counseling psychology. That's why I became a licensed clinician. That's why I spent about 5 years as a telephonic crisis counselor, working with people who literally had the means in their hand to take their own life. Guns, knives, pills, cars. A part of me just felt like I could relate to that feeling that life was not turning out the way they expected. Obviously, our situations were different, but whenever I spoke to somebody, I thought about my epilepsy and the pain that I went through trying to figure out my new course in life. I do it to this day. I still provide counseling and coaching services to people, and in almost every session, I think about something related to my epilepsy and what it's taught me. On top of all that, though, one of the greatest things it has done for me personally is it's allowed me to be there for the people in my life that matter most. In 2015, my wife was diagnosed with cancer. It was significant, her battle. She's behind it now. She's 4 years cancer-free, but it was an extremely tough time. And I felt to some extent I could relate to what she was feeling, the anger, the frustration, this isn't fair. Why did this happen? All those questions that go through your mind. I, of course, couldn't fully say I knew what her shoes felt like, but I knew what it was like to have a medical condition thrust upon me and have to change my whole life, as well as deal with the negative feelings of why did this happen. In 2016, my childhood best friend, one of the 5, was diagnosed with cancer. He's the one in the middle there, Kyler. If you were in my session earlier, I was talking about the friend that would call me every Friday after I was diagnosed, saying, let's go do something, let's get out. And I always said no. I was in a bad place. They gave him days to live by the time they discovered what it was. In true Kyler fashion, he held on for another 9 months. He even came up to Colorado and went to a cancer center here who said, we think we can give you about another 10 years to live. Thing is, though, is no one was paying attention to all the tumors growing up his spine and into his brain. And so it was only a month or so after that appointment that he took a significant turn. I feel like one of the ways that I was able to help in those moments is for everyone else. He was always pretty pragmatic and pretty stoic. He wasn't someone that needed to talk about what was about to happen to him, but everyone else around us. We were falling apart for 9 months. I mean, I flew to Austin every weekend to just be with him and his family, and my friends from Dallas would drive down, and we would just be there with each other. And obviously, I can't say I know what someone with terminal cancer is going through, but what I do know is that in those moments when it got really tough, a lot of other people had to leave. And I could stand in there and take those punches because I had been through something at least kind of similar. So often we talk about epilepsy and the negative effects, and there are a lot of them. But I think the people that thrive are the ones who can find the ways to use their epilepsy in a positive way. So I'm going to leave you just with a few final thoughts. Find a way to be helpful, even if it's something simple, holding a door open for someone, putting something higher than yourself in place to focus on. I'm not going to say go be religious or whatever, but find something larger than yourself to tap into and say, I'm going to make a positive impact here. You will be truly thankful you did. You'll be astonished at how much energy it gives you. I truly felt like I had taken this big step back from the ledge regarding, am I going to have a seizure? Am I going to have a seizure? Am I going to have a seizure? I wasn't thinking about that anymore. I'd come to a place where, yeah, I might. It might happen at any moment. But that's not going to help me get to where I need to be. And where I need to be is helping other people. I knew that. The second thing is that when you're diagnosed with epilepsy, when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, I'll say it that way, connections can hurt because they don't see the new you. All they see is the old you, and they don't understand why you're not that way anymore. But they can also lift you up. They can also be the thing that makes all the difference for you, those connections. But what your responsibility is, someone living with epilepsy, is to choose those connections wisely. If something isn't working for you anymore, you might want to stop and ask yourself, how much more do I want to put into this? Because the people that do care about you, they're going to care about this new you as well. So choose your connections wisely. It is going to make a huge difference. If you support someone living with epilepsy, keep these things in mind. I will always remember Kyler calling every Friday night. Let's go do something. Let's go. He didn't care that I had been diagnosed. What he cared about was that his best friend wasn't around anymore. It's a tough place to be in, living with epilepsy. But you can make it better by focusing on helping others and choosing your connections wisely. To that end, one way you can help the epilepsy community is that outside there's a petition. We're trying to get a license plate, and we need 3,000 signatures, and we already have 300. So after this, before you leave, get out there and sign that petition. It's going to help with the awareness. We all care about that, or we wouldn't be sitting here today. Simple gestures to help others. You can practice it immediately, implement it as soon as you walk out of the room. Today's been a great day. Thank you for sticking around, and thank you for your time.